Hi, my name is Annie Blue, and today is Friday, May 26, 2023, and this is my 11th Recovery Through Grief podcast. As a species, we are at the biggest evolutionary moment we have ever been at. The leaders coming to the forefront are those who empower others. I believe when we open past the world system of conditioned and programmed perceptions, then we enter a vastly different level where a whole new cosmos dawns. One of the questions that arises when grief jetsons into our life is, are you ready to be courageous and go further than you have ever gone before with your life? Grief takes us out of the lobby and into the main show. Finding that special someone who complements your beliefs, goals, and quirks isn't something that happens every day. The grief that persists when a love relationship is dismantled invites us to look at our life and see what's missing, see what hurts the most, and no longer pretend that everything is okay. Life will consistently provide us with invitations to examine the nature of our suffering, one of the toughest being the breakup of a love partner relationship. When you find someone, you mesh and want to enter a long-term relationship with them, yet longevity isn't something that's promised. Every relationship has something to teach us. Meeting your twin flame is considered by some to be the most powerful soul encounter a person can experience and can require conscious effort to maintain. My guest today, Jen McCarty, is a leading luminary in the Ascension and Twin Flame community. She teaches and guides, pioneering and leading change makers in the spiritual community. Jen experienced a life-changing Kundalini awakening at age 21 in the Himalayas in northern India, as well as another Kundalini experience in 2013. She is now in her 40s and has devoted her whole adult life to the path of spiritual awakening, mastering many disciplines along the way. She specializes in working with the law of attunement, demystifying ascension within the process. She continuously answers the question of what ascension is and how does one ascend. Jen also supports the meaning and purpose of the twin flame reunion and the removal of the roadblocks that stand in its way. She's an awakened spiritual teacher, deeply and highly skilled at facilitating a space for all those whom she encounters to awaken to greater levels of abundance, greater health and well-being, weight loss, and alignment with one's soul's highest destiny. Jen is a prolific writer who currently has at least 19 books she has written. I will name a few of them. Twin Flames and the Event, a message for the 144,000 lightworkers. The Law of Attraction, Little Instruction Book. No More Crumbs, an empowerment manual for the divine feminine. The Untended Altar, how to work with the spiritual vortex in your home. Twin Flames and the Event Workbook with exercises. No More Crumbs Workbook, an empowerment manual for the divine feminine. Divine Actor I Am, Light Code Journal. This journal is created with love. And her most recent, The Journey to Union. Welcome, Jen. So blessed to have you today.
It's my honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So grateful to you. So if you want to, I can ask you questions, or you can just go ahead and share. You want me to ask questions?
Yeah, that would be amazing. Thank you.
Okay, beautiful. So how do you define miracle? Can you describe your Kundalini experiences? And do you consider either one a miracle?
What's the first question?
How do you define miracle?
How do I define? Well, a miracle in the course of miracles is defined as a shift in perception, and that's really what it is. It's the whole of nature is governed on our perception, which is connected to our pineal gland, which is the seat of perception. And so the old world has seen all of us experience the hijacking of our consciousness, but really it's the hijacking of our perception. And the old controllers wanted us to perceive their reality, their anti-God reality. And so the miracle is awakening to the pure, unadulterated perception of the true nature of reality, and the fact that this is God's universe, and that God is at the foundation of all of creation. And so when you shift that perspective of like, oh, this is just a mundane material world, to the true perception of reality, this is God's Garden of Eden, the paradise that has been created for all God's children, then it is that which is where the miracle lies. It's the shift in perception. And so if you apply that to your life, if you say you want to manifest something, say you want to manifest a particular job or a relationship, well, you can perceive the current situation from a place of separation. I'm separate to that which I wish to manifest, and all the thought forms that come from separation and duality consciousness. Or you can understand that everything's been pre-written, everything's been set out for us, and we just have to vibrationally match our heart's desires. So it's a very, very deep subject matter, miracles, but that's my kind of 2 cents worth of miracle consciousness. Essentially, it's a shift in perception.
I totally agree with that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then just anything you want to share about your Kundalini experiences, because I'm not sure. I think there will be listeners that haven't necessarily either experienced Kundalini or really truly know what it is. So anything that you want to share about either one of those, because they were so huge.
Yeah. So maybe I'll explain, I'll demystify the Kundalini awakening experience. So when we are all born, we sign up for amnesia, spiritual amnesia. We are born into this world where the overriding programming of this world is the belief in duality, which is broken down to the belief in separation. So when we're born, we have these 2 serpents that live at the base of our spine, and one is the masculine and one is the feminine polarity serpent. They are lying in their asleep comatose state at the base of our spine. When our Kundalini energy is in its comatose state, that is when our consciousness is calibrated to duality. And so at some point on our journey, we will experience a trigger that will awaken the Kundalini energy out of its dormant state. And oftentimes when that happens, it could be meeting with a twin flame, a guru, it could be a song, it could be an exquisite moment in nature. There is something will happen to trigger our Kundalini energy. And very often it's the feminine Kundalini energy that awakens first. And so she wakes up and she stands erect at the base of the spine, and then she kind of nudges her divine counterpart. She says, wake up, wake up. And then suddenly he then wakes up. And then you have these 2 erect serpents at the base of your spine. And then in that moment, they recognize each other as their divine half, as the other half of each other. And they rush towards each other in sacred union. Now, when the two Kundalini energies merge at the base of the spine, our consciousness comes out of duality, being calibrated to duality separation consciousness, and our consciousness returns back to union. So the Kundalini serpents, they represent divine union. This is also representative of the inner alchemical marriage that the initiate experiences with herself, big S self, which is AKA God self, divinity, divine self. And so one experiences the sacred merge of and the awakening to the fact that we are these individuated fractals of source energy, but we are simply drops of the ocean, and we are intricately connected to the ocean. And so what happens is the Kundalini serpents, they wake up, they rush towards each other. This takes us out of duality consciousness, brings us into union consciousness. And then the Kundalini serpents then begin their ascent up the spine. And as the energy moves up the spine, it's like a washing machine, and it begins to wash and purge all the chakras. And so any trauma, any thought forms, any memories that are not conducive to union consciousness will have to be faced and ultimately purged out of our energetic body. So the Kundalini awakening is a very, very confronting experience. It's a very blissful experience, but it's also very, very confronting, because you have to face your trauma, whether it's ancestral trauma, familial trauma, personal trauma, and then you even have to start dealing with collective trauma.
Wow.
So the Kundalini energy, it rises through the chakras, cleaning, cleansing, purging, upgrading. And then a lot of interesting activity happens when the Kundalini energy gets to the heart. So in the energetic body, we have a gland, which is called the higher heart gland, which is also known as the thymus gland. And once the Kundalini energy touches the thymus gland, it starts releasing pulses of unconditional love. And then the initiate is flooded with an overwhelming sense of unconditional love. And that unconditional love is applied towards the self and is applied towards all of God's creation, including our connector with our Heavenly Mother and Father. And so a lot of activity, a lot of shifts happen once the Kundalini energy, the initiate goes into bliss consciousness. Very often that happens. The Kundalini energy merges through the throat chakra. This cleans out all the memories of persecution. A lot of us on the spiritual path have been witches. We've had a lot of like, stuff has gone down with our mouth, with our tongues. So you have to cleanse and purify all that trauma. And then the Kundalini energy rises from the throat chakra, and then it gets very interesting, because it then starts connecting with the pituitary and the pineal gland, which are the masculine and feminine glands in the brain. And once it starts hitting the pituitary and the pineal gland, it starts activating the release of a secretion, which in the Bible is known as milk and honey. And so this secretion is automatically connected to the opening of the third eye, and the initiate opens their third eye through their Kundalini. It triggers the opening of their third eye. They go into God consciousness, they awaken to their multidimensionality, and they activate their Christhood, quite frankly. And then so a lot of activity happens. You start getting downloads, you start getting a really deep understanding into the full nature of reality. And then the Kundalini energy reaches the crown, and then one's divine sovereignty is fully actualized and activated. That's it in a nutshell.
That's a absolutely thorough and beautiful, clarifying way. I've heard it a lot, but that was really easy to bring up the image of everything that you were describing, and very, very helpful to myself as well. As much as I think I know, it's always beautiful to hear more of what you have to share with it. So did you consider either one of those a miracle, either one of your Kundalini experiences?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a miracle that I woke up. I mean, I was a young girl, you know, but I was a very, very pure soul, and I've always been a very pure soul. And also there are signs, if you look back in my childhood, you will see signs that something big was going to happen for me. Like, I was fascinated with astrology at aged 5.
Wow.
Yeah, I could read fluently by the age of 3. I was highly adept on all levels, particularly in my body. My body was very advanced, and I was really, really super good at sports and stuff like that. I was like an all-rounder, so I was a highly adept being, from like straight off the bat. So, because but I wasn't very spiritual as a young girl. I mean, I was interested in astrology, but I didn't have like psychic experiences. I didn't have out of body experiences. I didn't like see spirits or anything like that. In fact, when I was a young girl, I was very gifted at maths. And I look back now and I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. But what I realize is that because I was always going to have a highly developed, creative side of my brain, in my childhood I was all about getting the rational, logical aspect of my brain like really, really up to the same level as my as the right side of my brain, basically. So I kind of left brain orientated in a way. But yeah, so I think what happened to me, this is quite a rare, because people do have enlightenment experiences, but they don't stay there. I was able to stay there.
Wow.
You know, and that's the trick, you know, to not come out of it. So yeah, it was a miracle, absolutely.
Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful. And you know, I don't think I've ever heard of, I've always heard of people describe one experience, but I don't know that I've ever talked to somebody that's had Kundalini experiences twice.
No, I know. I was really surprised that it happened twice as well. But I stayed in a very, very like sort of peak enlightenment stage because I had my Kundalini when I was 21. And then I stayed really, really, really stabilized for about 15 years. And then I had an incident where, because I was in butterfly consciousness, but I was hanging out with caterpillars, people that were in caterpillar consciousness. But because of who I am, I being in angelic consciousness, you just project that. You project it onto everyone. Oh, they're angelic as well. They're angelic as well. Their service to others. They're all about humanity. And they weren't. They absolutely weren't. And so this group of people that I was involved with, their sort of low vibration, I allowed it to get in to me, and it pulled me out of my alignment for a quick moment in time. But that was then enough for me to get triggered to have another Kundalini experience. So it's all perfect.
I mean, it's so powerful that that higher aspects of yourself were there for you in such a great way to come back and bring you back up, which we know is for the greater destiny of why you came here to be. But still, it's a neat story, because I wouldn't have ever thought of that happening, and then that outcome being another Kundalini experience. So it's really cool to hear.
Yeah, it's quite unusual.
So what new gifts and insights open in couples as they learn and comprehend more of the twin flame embodiment? I love your share that the word heart includes the word ear. I just thought that was so great when you had that in one of the books I read of yours.
Yeah.
So it was, what new gifts and insights open in couples as they learn and comprehend more of the twin flame embodiment? That's a big one for sure.
I'm just trying to get my head around it. What gifts do couples experience when they become aware of the twin flame phenomena? Yes. It depends. I mean, it depends, because if you're a twin, like genuine twin flame couple, then you won't need me to tell you anything. Like you're just going to be like cruising on your twin flame path. If you're a lot of people are in these karmic relationships, which is a lot of people get married based upon survival, like just wanting to be with someone, just to have someone, just so that they can tick all their boxes. And, you know, and so if you become aware of the twin flame path, but you're in a karmic relationship, it's gonna activate like some rumbles, like it's gonna pull you out of your comfort zone, and it's going to get you on your spiritual path, you know, because really the twin flame is symbolic of the relationship with God. Like, so you don't really need the twin flame. You can be in relationship with God, because the role of the twin flame is kind of like your bridge to union with all that is. They just kind of like stand at the threshold. And I mean, it's very, very deep and complex. Like, I recommend reading my books. I go into it in extraordinary depth. But yeah, I think that the twin flames, it's completely and utterly transforming once you learn about this path. But the thing is, it's like we all are coded in our hearts to actualize this divine love. And that's why I've started watching a few, like, I didn't watch TV or anything for years and years, but I've started watching a few streaming things. And it's like you realize, like, no matter where you're at on the spiritual path, like, you are coded to find your, they call it soulmate in the sort of like 3D world, they call it soulmate, but they're talking about the twin flame. Like, everyone is coded in their heart for that ultimate union, which is just pure happiness. Like, it's just pure happiness, you know. And it's still quite rare, and people write to me and they're like, oh yeah, but Jen, I'm not experiencing that with my twin flame. And I'm thinking, it's not your twin flame, because it's probably like some karmic or catalyst connection that you're labeling as a twin flame. But really, it's across the board. It's like, when you're actually united with your physical twin flame, you don't want to be separated from them. You're like, you just want to be together forever, you know. And so that these are the couples that spend like 100% of their time together. And it's still super rare on this earth, but it's such a different quality of relationship. Like, it's absolute happiness and bliss. There's no other way.
I feel like I'm starting to see more couples that are more twin flame, especially now. It's just really been lovely, because they're both doing the work together. You know, they continue to do their spiritual evolution, and it's so enjoyable to feel the energies, first of all, but to also see the simpatico that they share in every way. I really cherish that I'm getting to see that more and more. And I'm in a part of the country that is a very strong healing area of the United States. And so I think that's part of it that I'm getting to be in. And there's so much nature here. I mean, there's just absolutely unbelievable.
Where are you, Annie?
I'm in Asheville, North Carolina.
Wow, cool.
Oh, if you ever want to come, you are more than welcome. It's seriously the energy, because there's just so many mountains, and there's one mountains that are related to the Pleiades. I mean, it's just exquisite energies here, and a lot of dragon energy. So it's really beautiful.
Oh, wow, that sounds amazing.
I'm going to read an excerpt from your book, The Twin Flames and the Event, a message for the 144,000 light workers.
What?
Taking this path means that whatever you seek outside yourself for love, through relationships, substances, food, or any addictions, you will never find it. This is how I have created it to be. It is only by turning back to me, turning back to yourself, that you will ever find the solace, comfort, and love that you seek. So anything more you want to add to this, if you need for me to read it again, I will.
I've got nothing to add to that. It's just, it's beautiful. Like, the context is that this is the prologue to my book, Twin Flames and the Event. And it's about that moment where the soul is about to incarnate into her body. And she has this conversation with God about the journey. So this was like a personal message that I received from my journey.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that I shared in my book.
I hadn't even, I mean, I read fast, but I hadn't picked that aspect of it up. So it's
Really?
so how important is having a common ground and or common denominator for bonding? Each relationship in life invites us to surrender our smaller self to our larger self. Like even with people that aren't there yet, but they're basically starting to develop and bloom by being in relationships. And it may be karmic, it may be what you describe as your catalyst relationships. But how important is the common ground and common bonding?
I mean, when you're with your twin flame, like you're gonna have a lot of things in common, you know, like absolutely, because you're one spirit, two souls, you know, you're one spirit that's split into two souls. And the word soul is connected to solo, like the sort of like the solo aspect of the spirit. So the spirit is the unified aspect. And so you share the same hard drive, like you share the same subconscious mind. And so for me, as I'm on a high level ascension path, and the downloads that I receive, the insights, the healing modalities that I receive, that's all getting fed into my masculine twin flames akashic field, subconscious field. And so he speaks like me, like we use the same language, we have identical interests, like identical interests.
Wow.
Yeah, because you're the same. And also I feel like what I've noticed on my path is that the twin flame path is the path of spiritual mastery. And so, you know, it's like your sort of final lifetime in many ways that you you meet and bond with your twin flame. And oh no, the thing has just gone out of my head what I was going to say. Yes, it's the path of spiritual mastery. Sorry, I've lost my flow.
Oh, I totally understand that because everything's, but there are, I think.
Oh, sorry, I remember. Sorry. So therefore, I've noticed that with myself that I'm very in touch with my masculine and feminine energies. Like I'm not just in my feminine and kind of like in that receptive mode. Like I'm super, super active. I'm very, very action orientated. Like I said, I was going to make an album. Boom, I just made an album. I said I was going to write a book. Boom, there's the book. Do you know what I mean? And this is someone that is very adept with their masculine energy. But yeah, I'm also very, very, very in tune with my feminine energy because I'm comfortable with my vulnerability. I mean, I could probably be a little bit more receptive because, I need to work on being a little bit more receptive. But I'm very, very nurturing. I'm very, very deeply empathic. And I've noticed that with my divine masculine, he's very, very balanced with his masculine and feminine energies. And I really, really feel that that is quite applicable for twins on the path, that they do become quite balanced, which just serves to underline their similarities. You know, we're very, very similar. So there's a huge sort of like area of sameness with the twins. Yeah.
And the key word I heard you say in there too was balance.
Balance, yeah.
Very, and it's interesting because my guides came up with that recently about balance right now with everything that's going on in our world, and actually showed the bicycle and just having, asking us to hold our hands out to our side as we're energetically riding along through what is now occurring within our planet here these days. So.
Yeah. It's really, really interesting. Like myself and my twin flame, like our gifts are they're almost identical.
I think they're so cool. I came in with a twin brother, which is
wow, that's so cool.
No, you think it's cool, but it is. We are literally night and day difference. Like there's no bond. I recently had somebody tell me that the twins that are the same gender that come in, together are very, very close, but there's much more of a tenaciousness and contention because I mean, there's no way he'd be in this conversation at all. We are literally so different, and I haven't seen him forever. Not that I don't want to, but so it's interesting too to witness that, like, you know, coming in the womb.
So when did you last see him?
Oh gosh, over 20 years probably.
No way.
Yeah, there's nothing. There is nothing.
My gosh.
Yeah, and he's actually not that far away from me in geography wise. But we're just so different. Like it's just wild. So this is my favorite that I just gleaned recently. I just love it. In asking about us as humans, what are your thoughts on our greatest fear being the fear of being amazing?
Yeah, I think that's, you know, one of the hallmarks of the ego. The ego has many aspects, you know, and one of them is, and it's all fear of blank, fear of. So you know, you have to like, you'll never get rid of your ego. Your ego is like the clouds in the sky, and your true self is the sky, and our true consciousness is the sky. And then every day there are clouds in the sky, and that's the ego's thoughts. But the sky doesn't wake up one day and forget it's the sky and believe it's this limited cloud. You know, it knows that it is the space where clouds come and go, and they're dark, they're rainbows, but the sky is just the space holder for the temporary appearances, you see. And it's like, you can't sort of micromanage one of the clouds. You have to look at it as a whole and realize, who am I? I am the blue sky consciousness, and my ego is, and even no matter how enlightened you are, you don't get rid of your ego. You just become the observer of your egos. Oh, there's that thought again. I don't believe it. I just see my ego as like a crappy radio station that's just like playing in the background. You can't get rid of it. I just don't listen to it. I don't give it any energy. I don't give it any attention. So whatever it says, I'm just like, I just focus on the present moment. And that's why we need a spiritual practice that keeps our consciousness anchored in the present moment, because there's no ego in the present moment. There's just presence. So the opposite of ego is presence. You know, so you have to develop a spiritual practice that is going to hook you into presence. Because if you don't have that, your ego is very, very, very clever, and it's going to pull you into all manner of identification. And it's like, enlightenment isn't a destination. Enlightenment is simply a choice. And it's like, you don't just arrive in enlightenment and then that's it. You're still faced with every moment getting to choose whether you identify with presence or identify with the egoic narrative. Every single moment you are presented with that choice. And so it's a very active, dynamic state of being. It's not like a resting kind of, it is resting, but it's also dynamic. Like when I really stabilized, I heard this amazing analogy, and it said, it's like imagine this tiger that's like standing at the gateway of your consciousness, and it's always alert, like waiting for that moment where that egoic thought slips in, taking you into identification. And so enlightenment is that, like, it's alertness. You have to always be alert. You have to always be aware. Because if you're not, the ego is going to seduce you. The ego is going to convince you that to believe it. It's brilliant. It's what it's there for. It's as intelligent as you are, you know. So it's going to find a way to try to hook you into a temporary identification. So you always have to be alert. So for me, every day I'm like, I'm with the tiger. I'm ready.
It's so cunning and baffling for sure. That's great. That's a great imaging of that too as well. I really like it. Yeah. It'll be fun to have. I mean, I do really am more present and present every day in so many more moments. It's great. But it's fun to have something like that that's a picture. So have you ever heard of saint-like people being described as ecstatics? If so, can you share more about how you have experienced ecstatics? And I'm going to qualify this by saying, I believe from everything I've experienced with you, that you would be considered an ecstatic.
What is an ecstatic? I do feel like
they really are exactly what you're describing in the 0 point, I don't want to call it philosophy, 0 point beingness. They literally are truly present in every moment, even though they're tested like you just described. But they're very often, it is selfless service, 24/7. 24/7, and they just, there's been some really neat saints. I think there was Saint Julius. There's just been really beautiful beings out there. The one that I think that was Julius, she literally just stayed within like a brick kind of not temple, but an area where she was just always present to her spiritual nature, but in the process made songs, beautiful music, and also did a lot of writing. Really, to me, that's why I'm bringing it up, because to me, that's what I pictured when I've connected with you and your work, is that you're always listening spiritually and taking those next steps. And it's so cool to hear that your masculine part of yourself is also such a great part in the taking action part. So yeah, that's how I would best describe it.
So the question is?
So the question really is just, you basically said you haven't heard of ecstatics and just anything that you know about it. So truthfully, it's just bringing that word up and bringing it into our share today, because I think it's important. You've used ecstatic in your writing. You use that word.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I am very, very authentic with myself. And so when I feel anger, I feel anger. When I feel rage, I feel it. I'm like a child. So there is ecstasy in feeling all of our experiences. Like, I don't hold on to stuff. I don't hold on to grudges. I don't hold on to anger. I just express it in that moment. And there is an ecstatic release always, because I'm just being authentic all the time. It's like I've been in this journey for many, many, many years, and it's like being on a boat, and you go through certain periods where it's a certain a certain kind of like vibe, and then it's another vibe, and then I've experienced, and I do experience, like abiding peace, and that can be broken down to stillness. I feel a resounding stillness and trust in my being of who I am and who I am the daughter of. And so within that knowing is where I source ecstasy, in the remembrance of who I truly am. And there is never, ever any wavering in that knowing. And so ecstasy isn't like, I have had that very kind of like Kundalini rushing experience. Like I've had that, and that helped me a lot to stabilize. But my journey has not been all that. Like, it's very, very real. I'm a very, very real person. But I source my ecstasy in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, because it helps me look at too, that I'm starting to witness that more and more in my relationship. That's my divine masculine counterpart, and we're doing that more and more often, where we are in our feeling and our emotion, and it comes through, and we activate that or in it, but we switch out of it so beautifully. And it's really nice to just give ourselves permission to just be in the emotions like you're describing, because I think there's just so much spiritual bypass that's going on where people are saying, you know, it's almost like they're denying that you're allowed to have emotions, really, because it's like a negative. I mean, there's just a lot of perceptions, I would call it.
Don't know their arse from their elbow. Most people that are talking about it, they haven't got a clue about enlightenment. It's so rare. I've never met an enlightened person in my life.
Wow.
Not
Wow.
one.
Well, some of these ecstatics I'm describing are, so the process of accessing your Akashic records can prune years and even lifetimes off your spiritual and awakening journey. Within our Akashic records, our sacred wound can be revealed. Can you discuss what the sacred wound signifies for you, and then explain Akashic records? You mentioned them already, but really I'm more interested in hearing what you can say about sacred wound.
Well, our sacred wound is the thought and belief in that I'm separate to God. That's the wound. All wounds, that's the mother wound. And all wounds derive from that. So you have to heal your relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you want to heal yourself, you have to walk yourself home. And that's what I've devoted my life to, helping my brothers and sisters walk themselves home, you know. And that means, so I developed a healing modality called quantum time travel therapy, QTTT.
Mm-hmm.
And when I had my ascension in 2013 and I became fully awakened on a multidimensional level, I really received the true gnosis of time, of what time is. And time is not what we have been taught on the third dimension. Time does not operate horizontally in a linear fashion. Time operates vertically. And so what we realize is that in enlightened consciousness, which is presence with the 0 point field, we're standing in the center of the place where all timelines converge. They all converge within the 0 point field. So what you realize when you have that experience is that, oh wow, I have a memory from when I was 7 years old, when my best friend rejected me, and a part of my psyche froze in that moment, and I need to go back in time to change that timeline, to retrieve that aspect of myself, and I need to go and pick her up and carry her home. So, and you know, trauma healing and enlightenment go hand in hand, because you can't bypass it. Like, you know, it'd be great if you could bypass your trauma, but you can't, not in my experience. You have to recorrect the trauma patterning within you. But all trauma, if you follow its root, it is to do with the belief in separation, the belief that we've been abandoned by God, and that we are separate drops of water that are completely and utterly disconnected from the ocean. So wherever we've held that belief is where we experience trauma, you know, and it could be in a myriad of ways, you know. But enlightenment means the responsibility to apply what I call timeline management. You have to manage your timelines, particularly your trauma timelines, so that you can walk yourself home, and that's it. And it's like you're retrieving that moment in time, retrieving that aspect of you, retrieving that aspect of you. I still find teenage parts of myself, because I kind of like missed out on that, and I was like, oh wow, I had a really traumatic incident with this guy, you know, and like that's created this thought form in me that I only attract certain romantic things. And so I went back in time, and I connected with that aspect of myself, and we changed the timeline. We changed the timeline where the guy that I was really in love with was in love with me too. And it's like your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between something imagined and something real. And so we have to give the subconscious mind a new script. And that is what trauma therapy is ultimately all about.
And I love looking at it as timeline management, because that's so succinct and so simple, really, to hear it that way.
Yeah.
I definitely have been practicing that. I've just never ever identified it as timeline management. So it's a fun way to look at it. And then anything you want to offer about the Akashic records, which is really somewhat what you're talking about to do this timeline management. But there are going to be listeners that don't know the terms Akashic records.
Well, the Akashic records are subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is the Akash, and it's like we all house the knowledge of the entire multiverse within us, you know, and so all of our experiences from all of our lifetimes in all dimensional realities are stored within the Akashic records. And it's a bit like the blockchain. You know, we have the blockchain, which is the crypto sort of app where all of the crypto exchanges are stored. So everything is stored within a blockchain, which is the Akashic records. And then within the Akashic records, sometimes there are glitches, little glitches, where energy has got a bit stuck, and so really we want to manage those glitches, and we want to time travel back to the time when those glitches happened, so we can release that knot, and then that knot is then released in the whole Akash. Now, if we don't do that work, this is a pattern then that we die and then we reincarnate with the same pattern. That's what happens. If you don't have any awareness of the Akashic records, if you don't heal your trauma in this lifetime, you will simply be born again with the same trauma.
Well, and then how does ancestral trauma factor into the Akashic records?
Well, ancestral trauma, you choose your parents. I chose my parents. I was born into a family where there was a lot of sexual abuse, as are lots of us. And so that is a complex issue to have to deal with on a familial level. And so I had to, as the awakened member of the family, I had to heal that collective, ancestrally and individually, because I had absorbed my mother's trauma of being abused when I was in the womb. Even though I haven't experienced sexual abuse in this lifetime, my family has. And so I experienced that. I took on those imprints of her abuse. And so I had to heal and atone the imprints that were, that I took on board. And then I had to do a lot of work with the perpetrator on a spiritual level. I had to do work with the perpetrator of the abuse, and do my best to, working with Ho'oponopono, working with forgiveness and stuff like that, of clearing that ancestral wound,
Yeah, and for our listeners, a Ho'oponopono is a beautiful forgiveness prayer that is very, very helpful. So it's lovely. How do you respond when you hear people or clients, and this is really, you've somewhat discussed this already, state that a force that comes from outside is what threatens their security and stability? And I definitely even hear this with grief, when people are healing from grief. Like someone gets killed in a car accident, and for them, it's threatened. That outside storyline has threatened their security and stability. So they are paralyzed more somewhat within that storyline.
It just comes from ignorance. It just comes from ignorance. Like, it's not the eagle's perspective of who we are. If you know who you are, you know that there's no accidents, there's no mistakes. Everything has been set up and prescripted already, and we've all agreed it, like for the purpose of awakening us up spiritually. So if someone says that to me, I just have compassion for them, that they're in ignorance. That's okay.
Right.
Everyone's on their own journey. Yeah, and they'll get there. They'll get there.
Yeah. And I really like to look at it that way too, is that, we've all been there. It's nice to not be there,
Yeah.
Longer, but we've all been to, especially, way earlier before we really were on this greater path. Grace presupposes that not only are we seeking the higher frequencies, but that the higher frequencies are also seeking us. Everything in the cosmos seeks its opposite. Any thoughts concerning the premise that the higher frequencies are seeking us?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily use those words, that they're seeking us. I would say that there is a benevolent force that is our creator, that is creation. There is a frequency in the universe that manages a seed becoming a flower, an acorn becoming an oak tree, a sperm and an egg becoming a baby. There is a force, a benevolent force in creation that keeps our hearts beating without having to do anything. It's just always there, this great ecstatic benevolent force of creation. And we are all individual radio transmitters, and we have a duty to find a spiritual practice that is going to enable us to put our hands on the dial of our consciousness and adjust it to that benevolent force in creation. So it's not seeking us, it's always there. I mean, yeah, you could say it's always seeking us, but that you could also say it's just always there. As individuals, we must attune to that frequency, and that is the very, very nature of my work, is assisting others to attune. Like, how do we attune to that frequency? We find a spiritual practice. We become addicted to being present and not identifying with our egoic consciousness. That is the way to connect with that benevolent force. We become addicted to gratitude. We start training our brain to focus on our blessings and being grateful. We use our mind to visualize. We understand that I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim of circumstances. Everything that's happened has been orchestrated by my higher self in order to wake me up. And I'm a creator being. Remembering that the universe gives us a blank canvas every single moment, and you can either take yesterday's story and plonk it on the canvas, or you can see, oh wow, I've got a blank canvas, I'm going to create the life I want to live. I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to go there, I want to have this abundance, I'm going to create that. And all of these ways of being, they literally turn the dial of our radio transmitter that we are, and we align with the benevolent force of creation. And then when we do that, we become magnetic to miracles, synchronicities, fortuitous meetings, abundance, what they call luck. It's all there, but it's all dependent on our frequency.
And I love that, tuning the dial. That's really a nice way. Also, you keep giving these beautiful images that are going to be nice takeaways from our talk today. Thank you. What's going to be the catalyst that's going to connect the value to the world of what each of us bring? Will humanity mutate its own genetic code to develop a new kind of awareness system that will allow us to transcend the mind and directly experience our unity with all things? I know this is a really, really huge question.
Okay. So basically, this comes down to the question of what is ascension? What is ascension? And ascension is the transformation of our DNA, ultimately. And so when we're born and our Kundalini energy is asleep, we have what's called an activated 2-strand DNA, which is all connected to survival and the basic functioning of the body. This is also caterpillar consciousness. And so on our journey, we will have an experience, and something will trigger us to make the Kundalini awaken. And once the Kundalini awakens, this then activates the upgrade of our DNA. And our DNA goes from a 2-stranded DNA to a 12-stranded DNA.
Yeah.
But 12-strand is not 12-strand, it's multidimensional. It's 144. It's same as when you talk about fifth dimensional consciousness. That's not fifth dimensional consciousness is the gateway to full multidimensional consciousness. So when we talk about 12 strands, we're not just saying, oh, it's just 12 strands. We're talking about fully activated DNA. So all of us that are on the ascension path experience the upgrade of our DNA. Like, I am a person who has a fully activated 12-strand DNA, and you can hear that in the way I speak. You can hear that in the miracles. I'm like a miracle maker. I'm working with this energy and constantly creating miracles based upon even if I lose something, if I lose my keys, I'll just do this little miracle thing. 2 minutes later, I'll find my keys. Just little things like that. Like, I had an example of, there was this guy who was living on the streets in Glastonbury. He was a drug addict, and it really affected me and my son. And I worked with this healing miracle modality called matrix energetics. And I did the matrix energetics. My son was really upset with seeing this homeless guy. And I said, don't worry, Phil, I'm going to do my matrix energetics. I did my matrix energetics. And within 24 hours, the guy was taken off the streets. He was put in the top rehabilitation centre in England. And in fact, he was sponsored by Russell Brand.
Oh,
yay.
Yeah.
It's like anything. This applies to anything. I can manifest anything. I can manifest anything for my son. I went out the other day, and my son's an actor, and I really felt I wanted to manifest him getting a role. And I did my matrix energetics. Within 1 hour, he got a phone call from his agent saying that he just got the role.
Wow. Well, yeah. I mean, and that's what I was getting back when I was talking about the fear of being amazing, is to really step into that we're master creators. That our species is just so blessed to be, we're so blessed to be human beings. And it's like, let's quit wasting time on not really stepping into the greatness and the amazingness and the incredibleness that we are. And this is what you're sharing is a perfect example of who we can be and how it expands out and to touch so many different everything within our world. It really does take the drops of water and bring it into the ocean.
Absolutely. So this is what happens on the ascension path. We activate more of our DNA, and then this makes us become completely magnetic to miracles. We become enlightened. We constantly get downloads. I'm constantly getting downloads. I'm using a huge amount of my brain. That's why I think you got a bit of a typo in at the beginning. I've actually written 9 books. I think you said 19.
Oh, I counted them out. I thought it was 19.
No, it's 9. I've written 9 books. I mean, I've got 5 books in my Google Drive ready to go, but so far I've published 9 books. But it's because I've activated like so much of my consciousness, and that's what happens on the ascension path when we go from 2-strand to 12-strand DNA. Like you feel it, you know it. And that's back to your original question.
Yeah, that's great. So relating is data flow, a data exchange. Trauma has created absence, a numbness in most of our species. The quest is to turn absence into presence, as you were already talking about, which is a new trailhead we can follow. Often we as humans cannot say what we feel. We cannot feel what we feel. Many are looking for a place to feel, looking for a sensation as an identifier for their void. How as a species do you propose, which you've really kind of covered this probably already in so much of what you shared, do you propose we embody and own lost or missing parts of ourselves, which really is just your time management process, I would guess?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so you pretty much covered that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to cover just some biggies that are especially I witness a lot within the recovering through grief process. Shame is born out of our self-loathing. We do not like to look inwardly and see how deeply we are wounded, so we try to run and escape our shame. All humans carry shame at some level. Although it may be uncomfortable, it is the beginning of the process of learning to accept what we are. Shame, with its locked energy, causes us to hide, evade, make mistakes, and not commit, also keeping many from not believing they are worthy. Recognizing with our compassionate self and inner spiritual resourcing that we are evolving, that we do not have to continue to split off from overwhelm, and letting go of the deep shame we hold is key. Any thoughts on the healing of shame? Still probably.
The healing of shame. You just got to face it. You just got to like face yourself and have love and compassion for yourself. Like, you know, if you feel shame, that like you drink too much alcohol or you have addictions or something like that, you have to like have compassion for the reason why. Like, why do you drink? It's probably because you feel really, really lonely. You probably feel really, really deeply disconnected. And so instead of kind of judging yourself on the actions that you take, like be soft and be loving and kind and understanding and empathic towards yourself, and understand that you are doing your best. Like, you're trying to survive, you probably for the most part, and life, you know, you haven't quite cracked the code of like, you know, how to show up optimally. So you've gone for an easy option, which is an alcoholic drink or something like that. But just extend love and compassion to yourself. Like, imagine that your child came to you and said, oh, you know, I've got this problem. Then you would have compassion and tenderness towards that part of, you know, towards your child. And so this is like having the eagle's perspective. You know, you're not identified with those kind of like lower actions that you're taking. You're much more connected to the reasons why, the holistic reasons why that's happening. And then if you can love yourself, like loving yourself is synonymous with enlightenment, you know. And you must love yourself. Like, if you don't love yourself, how are you going to teach anyone how to love you? Like, this is the fundamental primary relationship that we all have, is with ourselves. And if you have shame, it means that you're not loving yourself, and it means that you have got work to do, you know. And so do the work. Just do the work. Face yourself. Find a guide, find a mentor who is a little bit further along down the path. You know, because that's how I feel for myself. I'm a way shower, and what a way shower is that we sort of like land in these bodies, and we in this consciousness space which can be likened to a thick, heavy, dense forest. And we're all trying to find our way home. But as a trailblazer, as a way shower, I've been out there like cutting the, you know, the trees and whatever to make a path to walk myself home. And so as I've done that, there's this beautiful path, so people like myself can guide you through books, through meditations, through sessions. So I would recommend that. I would recommend finding a mentor that you really deeply connect with. But you have to realize there are a lot of charlatans out there in the online world that they haven't walked themselves home on a spiritual level, but they talk the talk, they don't walk the walk. And so you have to trust your intuition, because your intuition will always inform you whether you have found an authentic guide or a fake guide. And the fake guides are 10 a penny, you know. So my recommendation is to find a person that you deeply connect with, and sort of surrender to their guidance, because they're going to help you for a moment in time find your own path. Because it's like you don't teach someone how to you don't give someone a fish. You have to teach them how to fish. Someone like myself, I'm going to teach you the exact modalities that you can work with that is going to pull you out of every single hole you ever fall in. Because there are ways, and some of us have really been on the front line of this consciousness experience, you know.
And I meet a lot of people that I would call, you know, evolved in so many ways, and on the enlightenment path, excuse me, but they won't go to anybody outside themselves for further support. I just think sometimes it's like your face is smashed up against the windshield and you truly can't see. Like the shame may make you believe that it's so foreboding that you can't go any further. And I do believe that we do need guides. We do need teachers, and as you call them, way showers, to support us. Like even, I want to learn more about your matrix energetics. So there's that, that's what I've witnessed and I'm around some really what I would call, really powerful people in the ambassadorship that they're doing out there, but I'm still not seeing them go in and do their own interconnection work. Yeah.
You will feel amazing when you're in the presence of a true spiritual guide. You will feel seen, you will feel held, you will feel loved, you will feel deeply validated, you will feel honored, acknowledged, and so, I mean, I never had a guide, but there are some of us that really, really took one for the team. Like I took one for the team, like I had, because there was going to be no one that was going, I had to bring through these modalities myself. So I've done a huge work for the collective, so yeah.
And the other thing in discussing the shame that I think comes up a lot is I witness a lot of people having the fear of fear. Like say they have the fear of shame, their shame, but it's really the fear of the fear. It's so interesting how that has a twist to it, that they're really afraid of fear. That's a real big one that I see out there. So it's what came up.
There's fear, there's work to do. There's no fear, really. There's no existential fear. Like, okay, if someone's like smashing your house down, there might be a little moment of fear. That's okay. That's survival fear. But there's no fear, doesn't exist. If fear is in your mind, there's work to do. There's trauma to resolve, because really there is no fear. Like, God hasn't made this world a fear. It's just the programming and the illusion which induces fear. But that means that there's a virus in the program and you've got to remove the virus.
Very true. Very true. So all rejection is self-rejection. To reject another is to reject ourselves. Rejection can be unlearned, just like what you're discussing with the shame. We can learn to parent ourselves with great gentleness to our own heart, and at the same time own our hurt. We can bring ourselves back into trust. Rejection teaches us our inner want of seeking community, kindness, and meaning to life and living. Rejection can best be healed with gentleness. Do you have anything to offer on healing rejection, especially in reference to a love relationship? When people break up with somebody else, they do fine. But boy, when someone else breaks up with them, whoo, it really rocks every part of them.
Yeah, that's heartbreak. And heartbreak is a spiritual initiation, It's an invitation to find your true eternal relationship, which is with God.
So really back to that sacred wound again. Yeah.
It's like and it's okay to experience grief at the separation. It's okay, but don't stay there. Don't just stay there forever. Like, help yourself. For myself, when I've had those experiences, I go straight to bark flower remedies, and I work with flower essences. I work with Star of Bethlehem, which is specifically for grief. Now they're working on the subtle energetic body, because when we experience, rejection and stuff like that, it causes like a kink in our energetic field, and it's a bit like a creased shirt. because it should be all smooth. Our energetic field should be really super smooth. But when we experience like rejection and trauma that comes from that, it activates like a crease.
Mhm.
And so we want to try to take the crease out. And so when we work with flower essences, they introduce a higher frequency into the energetic field, which then floods the energetic field with higher codes, enabling the lower dimensional patterning to transform, you know, and then the creases just start dropping out very, very subtly, and you start feeling amazing. So it's like there are tools available. It's okay to feel that, but don't stay stuck there. And reach for the tools that are going to help you fast track this experience and bring you back to yourself.
And one thing I've witnessed too is that, like, for example, with the theme of rejection, that you can be tapped into a rejection situation, but then it's almost like it grabs all the, as you would describe it in the timeline management, all those other times of rejection. So it feels sometimes like a powerless vortex that takes you down and down and down and down. And it's like grabbing all those similar rejection moments that are still unhealed. So I think sometimes when it feels so voluminous, it's because it's grabbing in a kind of a tornado effect, all those other powerless moments when you felt that way that are still unhealed.
Yeah, so you can go back and you can revisit those times. Like I said, I accessed a time when I was 18 when I fell in love with this guy, but he didn't want to be with me, you know, and that was still playing out in my psyche, and I had to go and I had to revise that timeline, and I had to change that timeline, you know. So I've got to get my book out because it's going to help so many people, the Quantum Time Travel Therapy book.
Yeah, that'd be absolutely beautiful. So obscurity closes our approach to life, demonstrating as lack of availability and openness. It can show as cynicism, as one who spends most of their time in their left brain only. Separation is healed with care and love. You can have a significant impact overall by doing your inner wound healing. I definitely see a lot of also as another component of, you know, our separation. I call it like an armoring, where that, you know, like I was with somebody recently, and really almost every sentence out of their mouth was negative. You know, they were just being pulled down by those lower energies, but it was obscurity. It just felt like a really powerful part of themselves that had armored themselves against their sacred wound. You know, it was really doing a good job of protection, basically.
Well, that's what happens if you're spiritually ignorant. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the grief that comes from having witnessed the violation of that which you love, whether that is your home, your loved ones, or your personal freedom and integrity, is desecrating to relationships surrounding you during the recovery from such deep, deep trauma and post-traumatic stress. This is such a large wound in our lives as humans. It's just really rehashing what we've talked about. Indifference keeps us separate. Healing guilt with forgiveness is a start. So I'm not sure if we've talked about forgiveness. I can't remember if you brought that up along the way or not. Do you want to speak anything about forgiveness?
Forgiveness. I think maybe it kind of comes down to forgiving ourselves for not being perfect, forgiving ourselves for for not being perfect. And then if you can forgive yourself, it's going to be a lot easier to forgive others. But you know, the path of spiritual mastery is about having vigilant boundaries, and it's not about being a doormat. It's not about accepting abusive behavior. Like, you know, if you attract abusive behavior into your field, you can on some level forgive that person, but you can also set a boundary of like, no, that energy is not allowed into my field. You know, like I have very, very strict boundaries. Like, you're not allowed into my inner circle unless you come with love and devotion, because that's all I offer to my inner circle is love and devotion. And so if you don't have those energies, there's no space around my table. That's not about forgiveness or not forgiveness. That's just about self-love and about boundaries. Like, I'm only here to be deeply, deeply loved and deeply, deeply honored. And I'd rather walk alone than have people in my circle that are not that. Like, I will not tolerate that. That doesn't mean that I can't be forgiving towards that person that maybe was violating. I can forgive you, but I'm not going to let you in to my space unless you really, really take responsibility and become accountable for your actions. And if your actions show me that you've changed and you do want to come back into my inner circle, I'm up for it. But so forgiveness, you know, it's a fine line, isn't it? Because yes, you can, like, there's no one that I hold a grudge to, because I love everyone, because we're all God's children. Even people that really, really hurt me, I can't help but see the Christ in them. I can't help but see their cute little girl or cute little boy that still lives within them. That doesn't mean that they're welcome into my inner space. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. It took me a long time to learn that, you know, especially many, many years ago, because it's almost like I could see that beautiful inner child, that, you know, their true, authentic child in them. And that's what I would fall in love with. I could see that unlimited potential that they are. And I seemed to create relationships that weren't healthy because I was actually focused on the wrong aspect.
Yes, that's amen.
Yeah, it was interesting to be in that. So 90% of our junk DNA is not understood. That's where the memory lies. We have vast possibilities hiding in our DNA that lie completely untapped. And you've really spoken, you know, nicely to the DNA. Is there anything more you want to add to that?
It's like trauma is blocking the DNA. Like, trauma is blocking the upgrading of our DNA. So and also lack of spiritual discipline is keeping the DNA stuck at its 2-strand level. So if you want to experience the coming online of your multidimensional DNA, your 12-strand DNA, 1, find a spiritual practice and commit to it, and 2, become enlightened, and 3, when you're enlightened, heal your trauma, because enlightenment is going to highlight, because enlightenment really is turning on a big light within your subconscious mind. And then it's like, oh, there's that trauma there. Oh, there's that collective trauma. Oh, there's that ancestral trauma. Oh, there's that past life trauma. Oh, I have to atone that. I have to transform that. I need to revise that timeline. And then when you do that work, because it is your trauma that is keeping your energetic field knotted. And once your energetic field is knotted, then the chi, the prana, the life force of your divine self cannot flow. But once you start correcting those timelines and atoning those traumas, you experience the flow of your higher states, and then being in a higher state of consciousness then lifts the DNA out of its 2-strand form, and more aspects become online. And that's what's considered the junk DNA, but as if our creator is going to create junk. Like,
I know I hate that word, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
and then as you were talking about it, I was seeing that shirt that becomes uncreased.
Yes, exactly. It's
I love that. I love that picture of it. It's just such a nice image. Again, you've given us a lot of really good images today that are great to carry with us.
Yeah, everything that I've shared comes from my own direct experience. Like, I don't have a teacher. I don't have a lineage that I'm part of. I am the lineage. I'm like the queen of my lineage, really. So yeah, it's a really, really good way for us to understand the ascension process that is through allegory and metaphors.
Mhm. So I recently learned about that the divine virtue of kindness, and this was predicated with that there's 12 divine virtues within us, that the actual divine virtue of kindness is actually a whole universe within us. Do you think we carry universes within us?
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
Like, I believe that we live in a multiverse, and this is one universe, and there are many universes within the multiverse. And I think awakening is awakening to our multidimensionality, and awakening to multidimensional consciousness. So yeah, they go hand in hand. They're synonymous.
I had never looked at it though as a whole universe. I mean, you know how we, you know, in this downsized, conceptualized world that we're given here, I had never ever looked at the fact that an actual whole universe. I mean, I've looked at multidimensionality, but I haven't ever encapsulated that there's actually an entire universe, and with each divine virtue, they're all each one of them is a separate universe. So it was a neat new processing to look at that kind, and it's just so beautiful to look at kindness as a universe, a whole universe. Just take that beautiful word, and you know, I just like it.
Kindness is the true religion of the new earth.
That's a neat way to look at it. Yeah, I love, you know, going with that and really just taking it in more and integrating it more. It's beautiful for me to. It's just such again another resonant way to be, you know, to be in kindness. And so this is similar to what you had said. These are two truths that are provided by a coach that had worked with, jjinsights.com. And she said, everything happened in the only way it could have. That is the way it happened, and no other way. The only other way we think it could have happened is taking place only in our imagination, in a fantasy, and not in a three-dimensional reality.
Is there a question?
Well, I was just curious if you had any thoughts on that. I mean, it was really what you had said this earlier about really everything happens in the only way it can.
Absolutely, that's what I believe. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's all. Yeah, sorry.
And then the next one is, everyone did the best they could with what they knew and with what they had available to them at the time. Everyone, every time, period. That goes with the forgiveness.
Yeah.
To just really take that in.
The Course in Miracles. I read the Course in Miracles when I had my awakening when I was 21, and it really touched me deeply. And I went into Christ consciousness, and I really, really recognize all my brothers and sisters as the Christ itself. And it says in the Course in Miracles that forgiveness recognizes that what your brother did to you only happens in the world of illusion. Like, if your brother hurt you, that only ever happened in the world of illusion, because in the absolute sense, we're all one. It's like one personality that's split into billions of fragments. And so the self, in the ultimate sense, does not have the intention to hurt the self. Only in the Maya, only in the illusion, only in the third dimension can we have that experience of, you know, being hurt by another. In the absolute sense, it's not even happening. So when you reach a high level of awakening, you realize that, you know, I had a really bad relationship with my stepfather, but when I woke up, like, I realized, like, he was doing his best. Mm-hmm. You know, like, he was really doing his best at with what he had. That was all he had. because he was in survival mode. He was like riddled with so much fear and anxiety that he wasn't really hurting me. He was just projecting his own trauma onto me. So how can I not forgive him?
Mm-hmm.
How can I not have empathy and compassion? But if I told you the story, you'd be like, oh my God, what a horrible man. Like, how could he do that to Jen? Mm-hmm. But it's all just perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And coming back into loving ourselves. So the final stage in opening our hearts is to learn how to enable our love interface with the human world. For love to come to earth requires care and harmlessness. Human love respects boundaries, as you've spoken of a lot today, and yet is willing to operate within limitations, even though it is unlimited. Through deep self-honesty, we have the power to unlock our shadow and transform it within ourselves. That's really just a statement. So in closing, there is no time to misuse our life options here any longer. We are at a time in which we are going to places never deemed possible. The spiritual technology within us is real. The key to transformation is awareness. As we become aware of the shadow patterns at play within our relationships, right down to the deepest level, we loosen the hold that those patterns have on us. Even relationships that have a solid foundation require conscious attention and intention to maintain, even more so now. With information such as you shared today, Jen, we can begin to transmute these ancient patterns of inner conflict between the sexes, the patterns symbolized by war and love. We can finally have the opportunity to experience the byproduct of living with a permanent open heart that is always here waiting for us to deepen our heart space. By bringing a new version of ourselves into view, we can consistently fan the flames of this vision. Ralph Waldo Emerson stated, "The only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be." It is time to overcome the belief that you can't be that powerful. You are the revolution. You be the change you want. We are at the dawn of the rainbow of our true open awareness. The inner work we are doing now is opening the heart. This is the reward as we set ourselves free from the past on every level, and as we master creating our purpose, radiance, evolution, and life's work.
I'll just let everyone know of a couple of things that are going on. So I'm going to be hosting a big world ceremony on the 6th of June, the 6/6 portal, and that is going to be assisting the divine masculine to remove the burden of shame and unworthiness, which is really has riddled the divine masculine consciousness collectively. So we're going to be going back in time, and we're going to remove that block basically of pain, of shame and trauma. I'm releasing my book, The Journey to Union, which is the sequel to Twin Flames and the event, on the 4th of June. I'm releasing my album, Love Songs to God, probably on the 17th of July, which is a Twin Flame number 717. So there are 3 things to look out for. And yeah, so there we go.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate everything that you brought forward today.
Oh, so lovely to meet you, Annie, and thank you for your beautiful, really thoughtful questions. I really appreciate that.
Great. All right. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Okay. God bless you, darling. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.